Welcome back to Celebrating Life with FM Rainbow. My name is Fali R. Singara. In the studio with us today is the man who can rightly claim to be India's first broadcasting superstar, Mr. Ameen Sayani. He's a superstar who has worked with radio stations across the world, and his vast body of work includes over 54,000 radio programs and 19,000 spots and jingles. You've met and interviewed hundreds of movie stars, music composers, leaders, and famous celebrities. Who's been the most interesting person you've ever interviewed?
The most interesting person, Fali, was a person who was multifaceted. He was not only a singer, he was a music director. Some of the songs I think he wrote also. And he was a film director, film producer, and a fabulous actor, a comedian. And you know who I am talking about. None other than the famous Kishore Kumar. Now, Kishore Kumar was a very queer personality. You could never understand him. And his actions were so confusing. Now, for instance, he was very fond of money. And he was very scared of people who were trying to take money away from him. Now, it happened once that a great big film producer took him for a very important film. And the shot that he was supposed to do was he was supposed to drive a car from one place to another place and stop there and come out, walk, and then do a scene there. Now, what he did, because he hadn't been paid properly, he said, I'll teach this fellow a lesson. And what he did was his shot started with him starting the car from one place, going to another place, and then instead of coming out, stopping the car and coming out there, he just drove away straight home. And then told everybody, I did that because this fellow didn't pay me. So he was a madcap. And if somebody were to ring his house, and somebody whom he didn't want to speak to, he would change his voice and pretend to be an old man and say, Kishore ji, ghar pe nahi hai, aap baad mein phone kijiye. And so that, or if somebody came to his house and he didn't want to meet him, that fellow had already entered his house and was walking into the hall, he had a library which had a revolving door, and he would go and hide behind that and pretend not to be there. So all these mad things he used to do. And he did some mad things with me too, although I was a very good friend of his. And how it all started was that in Geet Mala, every year I used to call either music directors or singers or lyric writers to give some special speech about some subject or the other. And one year it was singers mainly. Of course, he was part of everybody. As a singer, I had already recorded Lata, Rafi, and so many other people, but I was waiting for him. He was sort of dilly-dallying, and then finally I told him, look, please, give me a time, Kishore. I'm a friend of yours. I'd known him right from his early days, from my college days, by the way. And he said, all right, since you're saying it with such love, you come to meet me at such and such a studio at such and such place. I forget the name of the studio. It was a very famous studio. I'm shooting there. It's between the shots. We'll take a short interview. You don't just want 2-3 minutes of man, don't you? I said, yes. So I took my machine, which was that ferrograph. It was quite heavy to carry. I carried it to the taxi, took the taxi, went to that studio. As soon as I reached the studio, I found that the producer of the film he was shooting for was standing at the gate. And he stopped the car, stopped the taxi, and then, Ameen bhai, rukiye. And I said, अरे आप तो उस फिल्म के प्रोड्यूसर हैं जहाँ किशोर दा आज काम कर रहे हैं. वो आ गए हैं ना, चलिए हम रिकॉर्ड करने के लिए आए हैं स्टूडियो का. I've got the machine also with me. But he stopped and he grinned very sheepishly. And he said, now I'm saying in English what he said in Hindi. I'm so sorry, Ameen Saab, but Kishore da has sent a message to say that Ameen Saab is coming for recording today, and I am not going to come to the studio until Ameen Saab has gone away. I was furious. I said, what the bloody hell does he mean by this? I said, he's such a good friend of mine. I've known him so well. What is this nonsense? So I said, tell him that I will never going to speak to him again or record him. So please forget about it. So that went by. Then what happened was the first program on All India Radio was my program called Saradon Ke Sathi. Saradon Ke Sathi was a program in which great film stars came and talked about other people, his friends or her friends. And the program had lasted 4 years, and I was about to record the last program of that series. And I tried to call Kishore many times, but he was again dilly-dallying. I said, to hell with you, damn it. I am not recording you. So then when that final last program was about to be recorded, I said, look, whatever happens, Kishore Da and such a good friend, I'm such a big fan of his, I must get in. So I was in those days doing the feature film publicity of his films. And the one film that I was publicizing those days was Bharati Ka Naam Daadi. And Kishore used to come for all his films for his publicity and create a lot of nakhras and nonsense and a lot of good things. And we had a lot of fun, by which time we had again got friendly. But he again started dilly-dallying when I started asking him for the last program of Saradon Ke Sathi. So anyway, he was supposed to come for Bharati Ka Naam Daadi. I left a message with all my friend office people. I said, I'm not going to go down to receive him, as I usually do. I'm going to sit in my studio. You tell Kishore, bring him up and bring him straight to the studio. And I was sitting in the studio near my mic as I'm sitting today with you, all alone in the studio, holding my head and looking pretty grim. And suddenly I found Kishore come up, and he banged the door open, and he saw me and he rushed in. Chale, Ameen bhai, shuru karta hai. We'll start the program of Bharati Ka Naam Daadi. But then he looked at me. I was looking very glum and very grim. He said, what's happened? Why are you looking so grim? So again, I'm talking in English instead of Hindi. I said, Kishore Da, didn't you see those in the corner outside the studio, those two pahalwans standing there? I've told them to stand there. And I've told them, look, I want Kishore Da to record the last program of Saradon Ke Sathi today. If he does not record, beat him up. And he was, of course, a sissy, very scared. So he got quite worried. He said, Kya? What did you say? I said, yes, I've told those people to beat you because you're not recording my program. So he said, acha. You're taking a badla for my old program, that Binaka, for which I didn't come, and you came to the studio. I said, that's exactly what I'm doing. So if you don't record today, Kishore Da, I swear to you, I'll never talk to you again. So I said, all right, I'll record the program. But on one condition, that you go and sit somewhere far away from the microphone, and I'll do the entire program. I said, Kishore Da, I have to ask you about your sathis. How is this program going to be done without me interviewing you? So he said, look, about sathis you want me to speak? No? Then he sang a song about sathis, which was a Sehgal song, K.L. Sehgal. And he was a great fan of K.L. Sehgal, very great fan. So he said, look, I'll sing for you, as far as sathis are concerned, a song which K.L. Sehgal used to sing. And the song was, Na main kisi ka, na koi mera, chaya charu और अंधेरा. So he said, I don't have any sathis. So I said, but then this is Saradon Ke Sathi. How can it be done? So he said, look, I'll do it on one. You go and sit there. I'll do the entire program. I'll interview myself. And I'll carry on a kind of a mukaddama, a case on 3 Kishore Kumars. The Kishore Kumar, the child, Kishore Kumar, the young man, and Kishore Kumar, the old man, what is going to become. So I said, but then what do I do? He said, you just sit in the corner, I'll do. I said, but who will be the judge? Who will be doing the case on you? He said, I'll play the judge myself. And in the voice of one old character actor, he played the judge, and he played the 3 Kishore Kumars. Kishore Kumar, who was a child, Kishore Kumar, who is the young man, and Kishore Kumar, who's going to be the old man. And that is the most outstanding program I've ever done in my life. And whenever it's possible, I try and play that program. And that's the most interesting incident I can relate about a film star.
Now, unlike any other medium, radio has always had this kind of mystique about it. Nobody knows what the presenter looks like. Do you get often recognized because of your voice? Who's the most unique fan you've come across, sir?
The very unique fans that I had were the very good-looking, presumably good-looking girls who used to write love letters to me. Some of them wanted to marry me, and I kept telling them, look, before I got married, when this used to happen, I used to tell them, look, my school principal one day had predicted that I was going to marry a Kashmiri Pandit. So, are you a Kashmiri Pandit? And they would say, no, of course. And then I'd say, sorry, then please, I can't marry you. And this used to happen to some of my college friends also, college girls. Then after I got married, then I used to tell them, look, I'm already married now to a Kashmiri Pandit, so you can't marry me now. But the most interesting thing about this was a film star, Zarina Wahab was the name, who later on married a very handsome young man, as handsome as you, Fali. And before she got married, now she gave an interview to a very famous magazine about her college days. And she said, do you know that when I was in college, I used to be very fond of listening to Binaka Geet Mala. And in fact, I fell in love with Ameen Sayani, and I thought I would definitely marry him one day. But then in the next line, she broke all my my great feelings of grandeur of saying, Zarina Wahab wanted to marry me. That next line said, but that of course was before I met him. So once she saw me, I mean, naturally I was no film star, and I said, thank God, everything went off very well. So these girls used to be always after me. But when they saw me, when they saw my photograph, in those days I wasn't so popular, so I didn't appear on TV or in magazines. But once they saw me, they said, no, chalo, never mind, forget it.
You are now in your 80s, sir, and I must tell the listeners that you look as charismatic and dashing as you were as a young man. Your voice sounds exactly the same when you were a young man. What's the secret to that charismatic voice?
What you have said is very nice to hear, but is not true, because I've been having a lot of problems with my voice these days, as you know. It's not the same. But there are various ways in which I've tried to keep my voice okay. There are 3-4 things, but I'll tell you about two of them. One of the things is gargling. There are some homeopathic mixtures which I can put in almost boiling water with steam coming out and cover myself with a towel and take that steam. So that helps me a lot to keep my voice okay. But for many days, if I haven't been able to take that kind of steam help, I gargle with water, either warm water or cold water, to keep my voice okay. But the greatest thing that helps a voice to remain as good as long as it's possible is yoga, pranayam, deep breathing. Now, there are various forms of deep breathing in yoga itself. The one is mudra pranayam, for instance, in which all one does is sit and do some gestures with one's fingers and does breathing at the same time. And there are other deep breathing styles also. The Western style of deep breathing is a very simple thing. I'll tell you about it. You do your breathing in 3 stages. You first breathe out totally, then you breathe in totally, and then you hold your breath. Then again breathe out, then breathe in, hold your breath. All this at the count of 5 or 7 or whatever you'd like to do. That helps a lot in maintaining your voice.
As a well-known and respected media personality and commentator who's trained generations of presenters, what do you feel are the essentials for one to be a good radio presenter? What makes a good radio show, sir?
The first thing which one must think of was you must know the language that you're speaking in. Now, as I've already explained to you, for many years I was an English broadcaster, and when I tried to go into Hindi, I was stopped at so many places because I could not speak it correctly. So you have to know how to speak correctly. Whichever language you speak, you must know how to speak it correctly. Secondly, as far as radio is concerned, now radio is a one-to-one medium, and therefore you have to speak as if you're speaking with somebody. You are conversing with somebody. The listener must feel that this fellow is talking to me. And you shouldn't just, start talking loud and just blowing your trumpet and whatnot and whatnot. As unfortunately I started doing first when I started broadcasting. In fact, even when I started Geet Mala, I was so excited that I was going to do a Hindi program, first Hindi program, and for my new country, India, I started doing it in a great, melodramatic style. And what happened some years later was when I got married to Rama, my Kashmiri Pandit wife. We had been married about a year. Her brother, Raj Mattu, came to Bombay from Delhi and naturally came and stayed with us. And one day after our dinner, he called me aside and he said, "Look, I'll tell you something about you and your wife which you don't know about." So I said, okay, tell me. So he said, "Look, before she was married to you, 1 year before getting married to you, we were in Delhi together and listening to your program Geetmala. So as soon as it started, within about 5 minutes of your talking, she took me aside and said, 'Who the hell is this talking? Why doesn't somebody ask him to shut up?' So I said, 'What? My wife said that about me? This is ridiculous.' Then I realized that yes, what she's saying was correct, because radio is a one-to-one medium. It's not that we are yelling out to somebody. And then I realized that I was doing it wrongly, that I should calm down, I should speak naturally, and then I started doing much more naturally in my broadcasts. But unfortunately, what happened is that first style of mine had caught on. And in fact, hundreds of broadcasters started using that style, early style of mine, by shouting and screaming and yelling and laughing and all that too, very, very loudly. They became popular. And when I hear these people talking, I hold my head and said, "My God, what is this style I started? I will never go into that style again." So then I became a conversationalist in my radio. And there is one great saying amongst all our broadcasters, that the greatest radio program is one that you can see. Because as we speak, the listener must feel that he is talking to us. Not only is he talking to us, but we can see what he is talking. We can see and feel ourselves getting into the picture that he is creating in front of us. And that's what radio is. The best radio program is one that you can see and feel and get into your total self.
Now, before you go, I must ask you this question. In the 21st century, we live in a digital age. So your thoughts on how to keep radio relevant for a young generation that consumes music, games, and videos on a mobile device and on the internet?
I feel that if the young broadcasters approach radio in the right direction, radio can never die. Radio will be the greatest communication medium of all, provided it is used well. So let's treat it as a nice medium, the medium of a good country, the medium of good humanity, the medium of good qualities. And the All India Radio in the earliest days was so great that they called it AKASHVANI, the voice of the sky. And that is what it should be. It should be the voice of God. It should be the voice of humanity. It should be the voice of equality and togetherness. And we must all remember a great poem by Rabindranath Tagore in English. He first wrote it in Bengali. The words were, "Chitto jetha bhoyo shunya, uchya jetha shir." The English poem was, "Where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is free, where the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls, where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way into the dreary desert sand of dead habit, where the words come out from the depth of truth, where the mind is led forward by thee into ever-widening thought and action, into that heaven of freedom, my Father, let my country awake." That is the spirit that we must create. And if we can create that, we shall always be happy. We should always be contented. Nobody will be poor. Nobody will be hungry. That roti, kapda, makan will be with everybody. We will love everybody. We will respect everybody. All women, all girls will be respected. In Gujarati, the mother was so high. Prophet Muhammad has said that under the feet of the mother lies heaven. Every religion respects women, and we should also do that. and respect everybody. And if that happens, my word, what a great country India will become.
Thank you so much for that, sir. Since you were talking about what a wonderful world we need to live in, you were listening to our special show. We were in conversation with Mr. Ameen Sayani, one of India's most loved media personalities. Mr. Sayani is an award-winning broadcaster, entertainer, and an advertising legend. He paved the way for radio broadcasting in India and is considered one of the world's most legendary presenters. The voice behind India's most memorable campaigns, he has been rightly called the golden voice of All India Radio and the voice of a nation. For his outstanding contribution in the field of arts and his services to the nation, the Government of India honored him with the Padma Shri in 2009. Thank you so much, sir, for joining me, Fali, on the show today. It was such an absolute pleasure and great honor having you with us today on Celebrating Life.
Thank you, Fali. Thank you, friends. Thank you, all listeners. I have already told you that this is one of the greatest days in my life for having come back to the English broadcasting section of All India Radio, from which I started my broadcasting career. This is my Janma Bhumi for broadcasting, and I can't tell you how happy I am. My heart is so full of happiness. Thank you very, very much indeed.
Thank you so much, sir. And we've had a wonderful time with you on the radio today, sir. Thank you so much. The show was produced by Mr. Rajesh Dalvi, assisted by Purva Karve Bapat. My name is Fali R. Singara. Thank you for listening in. Please stay tuned for our next program shortly.